Hello and welcome to a quick and dirty guide to Ara-Kara, City of Echoes, one of the new War Within dungeons coming to Season 1 Mythic Plus. The goal of this guide is to go over the important mechanics and strategies for the trash and bosses in this dungeon so that you can succeed from day one. So let's get into it. As you start the dungeon, you'll see several ravenous crawlers who just do moderate tank damage before seeing some engorged crawlers and jabbing flyers at the bottom of the stairs. These engorged crawlers regularly apply Venomous Spit, a poison which deals a good amount of damage over time. Extra poison dispels are very useful in this dungeon. The jabbing flyers apply Bleeding Jab, a stacking bleed, so watch out if your tank gets too many stacks. In this run, we chose to pull all the trash from the start to the first of 3 mini-bosses, Ixen and Lust, but it can be a difficult gather, so going slower may be easier until you're more familiar. You'll also see Trilling Attendants, who cast the moderate damage Web Bolt. Ixen casts the same spell, but also has a large frontal Web Spray, which leaves behind a damaging slow zone, which will stun you if you stay in for too long. While you want to kick as many Web Bolts as you can, make sure you kick Ixen's Horrifying Shrill to prevent your party from being feared. You'll also want to kick or stop the channel of any resonant barrages from the attendants, as it does heavy pulsing party damage. As another mechanic, when the engorged crawlers get to low HP, they'll cast Toxic Rupture, dealing damage and knocking back anyone in an area around them when the cast finishes, but you can CC them and they'll finish the cast away from you. There's also a profession buff in this dungeon for tailors. They can interact with the sparkling spider bodies to pull a thread and get a buff for 1 minute. Once during this minute, they can use their extra action button to stun a target for 13 seconds, which does work on these mini-bosses or other dangerous mobs in the dungeon. You'll find some more of the same mobs as you make your way to the second mini-boss, Noct. Noct has the same web spray and bolt, while replacing the horrifying shrill with Call of the Brood, a heavy pulsing AoE which spawns several crawler mobs your tank will want to pick up. Be careful if you have any attendants alive when you're fighting this mini-boss, as the overlap with the AoEs can easily be lethal. The final mini-boss is Attic, who also casts Web Spray but replaces the Web Bolt with Poison Bolt, leaving a moderate poison on the tank which can also be dispelled. He'll also cast Poisonous Cloud, placing a large green swirl to dodge which leaves a poison zone where it lands. Once all 3 mini-bosses are dead, the first boss, Avanoxx, will spawn on the central platform. This fight has a specific cadence with large AoE damage events. He'll regularly cast Voracious Bite, a tank buster leaving a vulnerability debuff for 10 seconds. Alerting Shrill deals heavy party damage and spawns crawlers from the eggs at the edge of the platform, which will fixate players and deal more damage the longer they're alive. If any of these crawlers get near the boss, he'll eat them and gain a massive damage buff, which will quickly kill your party or your tank. You'll want to switch to these adds and DPS them down while CCing or slowing them. After the adds have spawned, the boss will cast Gossamer Onslaught, another pulsing party damage, which will spawn swirls that leave web zones where they land, and spawns more eggs for his next shrill. You'll want to avoid the swirls and ideally stick together as a party to preserve space, as the webs are baited on players. Standing on the web deals damage, slows the player, and if you stay for too long, will incap the target for 10 seconds. Use defensives on the Alerting Shrill and Gossamer Onslaught, kite and kill the adds while preserving space on this platform, and the boss will go down. Once Avanoxx is down, you can make your way across the bridge into the city. The Bloodworkers will do some moderate tank damage, while the Bloodstained Assistants will do Extraction Strike. They're rooted during this cast so the tank can outrange the ability, but if they don't, the mobs will get a stack of unnatural strength, increasing their damage and healing, though this can be soothed off. The Bloodstained Web Mage will cast Web Bolt and Revolting Volley, applying a poison to all party members, dealing dot damage and absorbing healing. This can be dispelled if it goes off, but it's better to kick. The Hulking Bloodguard applies a 50% damage reduction to all nearby mobs, so make sure you prio them down. He'll also cast Slam, dealing decent party damage while also casting Impale, a frontal knocking anyone back if they get hit. As you continue through the city, be careful of the Sentry Stag Shells, as their cast Alarm Shrill will spawn an extra Bloodguard and aggro nearby mobs. Not only do the blood guards have high health, the damage reduction they apply can slow your rundown significantly. The rest of the trash is made up of the same mobs, and soon you'll be facing Anub'zekt, the second boss. This boss will cast Infestation, a massive dot which leaves behind a moving zone of insects when it expires. He'll also cast a similar Impale ability, but with a wider area. Eventually, he'll cast Burrow Charge, targeting a player and dashing through them across the map. After he reaches a wall, he'll turn and cast an Impale across the arena. While the boss is doing his mechanics, periodically through the fight, web mages will spawn in the arena and cast Silken Restraints, rooting their target and increasing their nature damage taken. So you'll want to kick these constantly to bring them into melee for cleave and to prevent anyone from getting stuck in danger. When he reaches 100 energy, Anub'zekt will go into his intermission, creating a safe zone in the arena and filling the rest with biting insects which will rapidly kill anyone outside. This zone will slowly move, so stay inside, dodge the impales, avoid the tornadoes, and keep kicking any remaining web mages before it finishes, and the boss will repeat his mechanics until he dies. After the second boss, there are only a few new mobs and a handful of packs before the final boss. The Blood Overseer will cast Venom Volley, also applying a dispellable poison if not kicked. They'll also cast Erupting Webs, creating several swirls to dodge. All of the smaller mobs in this area will drop black blood when attacked, leaving a void zone which will root you if you walk over it. These reinforced drones will deal moderate tank damage and apply a stacking slow, while the winged carriers will use Dashing Strike, dealing moderate damage to a random player. Be careful pulling too many carriers, as multiple dashing strikes on one target in quick succession can be lethal. The Nerubian Hauler will cast Massive Slam, dealing heavy party damage, stunning everyone for a short duration, and applying a stacking damage done buff to itself. So make sure you have a plan for later slams with defensives, healer cooldowns, or use DPS cooldowns to make sure it dies quickly. After the last two Overseers, you can pull the final boss. Kikatal the Harvester will frequently cast the same Erupting Webs the Overseers did, placing several swirls which stun you if not dodged. She'll also cast Cultivated Poison, applying a hefty poison dot on all players. This can be dispelled to mitigate damage, but when dispelled or when it expires, will shoot out 2 waves of poison, which deal massive damage, so you'll want to spread out and dodge everyone else's waves. Prio dispels onto your squishiest players, or your healer if everyone is healthy. You'll also see several mobs running around the area, carrying and dropping black blood when attacked before fleeing. When the boss casts Cosmic Singularity, she'll pull everyone in and deal lethal damage to anyone caught in the blast when it finishes. To avoid it, you will want to run over one of these void zones to root yourself. Once the cast finishes, you can CC the mob rooting you to free yourself, so you can dodge the next mechanics. Rinse and repeat until the boss is dead. Thank you for watching another dungeon guide, and I hope you found it helpful. Please like and share, and remember to turn on Arachnophobia mode in this dungeon if you aren't fond of spiders. If you haven't yet, subscribe to see future dungeon guides and tips.